Well, my name's Aaron, if you guys don't know me. I am the college minister here. I help lead the Creek with my wife. So if you ever see like a little Latina girl running around, like a chicken with her head cut off, that's Karina. She's my wife. She's incredible. And if you haven't been here, we have been going through the book of John. We preach through the Bible here. We go book by book, verse by verse most of the time. And we're in John. Last week we were in John chapter 4, talking about the woman at the well, if you weren't here. Incredible story, powerful story. I recommend if you weren't here, go back to John chapter 4 and read it. But this week we are in John chapter 5. And we're going to see Jesus show up to this pool. And he is going to encounter a man who has been invalid, paralyzed. His legs don't work for the past 38 years. 38 years. And I was reminded of this guy. Anyone know who Nick Vujicic is? Hopefully I didn't butcher his name. Nick Vujicic. All right, I must have butchered his name because no one knows who he is. He's super famous. He is an Australian. And he goes all around the world and he preaches the gospel to all of these different countries. He's just like a very powerful evangelist. He also has written many best-selling books. This man has also developed curriculum for schools to help with bullying because as a kid, he was bullied horribly. Something about this man, he was born with no arms and no legs. Now you guys probably know who I'm talking about. You guys may have seen him on Instagram Reels or something like that. And he got bullied so bad that throughout high school and throughout middle school, bullied so bad that he had severe anxiety, severe depression. He also attempted suicide. When he was 10 years old, he tried to drown himself in a bathtub. I was learning all this week, and it's just terrible. And then I was, going through his videos, just flipping through, and I saw a video that was like, wow, this is amazing. They asked him, how did you come to the faith? Like, what is the thing that brought you to the faith? And I wrote down his answer. I want to share this with you guys. He said, well, I used to believe that my biggest problem was that I had no arms and no legs. Then I realized that that wasn't my biggest problem. I realized that I was only going to be on this earth if I had a good life. If I had a good long life, I probably would only be on this earth for a maximum of probably about 90 years. And my biggest problem in that moment was I didn't know where I was going when I died. I had no idea. And every day I used to pray that God, by some miracle, would just heal my arms and heal my legs and give me new arms and new legs. Every day I used to pray that as a kid. But then as I got older, I realized my biggest problem wasn't my arms and my legs. My biggest problem was my soul. And then he said something that struck me. He said, and what good is it for someone who has both arms and legs, but they live their whole life never really knowing what to use them for? And I'm just like, man, this is powerful stuff. And it parallels so well with John chapter 5, because what we're going to see today is Jesus shows up on the scene to this pool, and this man who's paralyzed for 38 years, he says, stand up and walk to this man. His legs get healed. He's miraculously healed. But what we're going to see is he misses the true miracle. Jesus wasn't just going for his legs to be healed. He was going for his soul. And he missed it. So if you have your Bibles, John chapter 5, we're going to go through the first 5 verses to start. John chapter 5. This is what it reads. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda. Guys, I just want to say, I might mess up that word. I've been saying all week Bethsaida, so if I say that, just point and laugh at me. It's called Bethesda, okay? I just so I don't have to think about it. Okay. Anyway, called Bethesda, which has 5 roof colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. So one thing I want to note is John spends this entire chapter, about 17 verses, writing about this pool of Bethesda. But here's the thing. For centuries, people have been trying to honestly take this passage out of the Bible. They have been trying to use this passage to point to John's gospel and say, John's gospel is unreliable. It needs to be taken out of the Bible. We can't even look at John's gospel and consider it reliable anymore because it's messed up. And here's why. Because no one had ever seen the pool of Bethesda. No one had ever heard about the pool of Bethesda. This was the only historical record that we have known to man of the pool of Bethesda. So for people, they're like, well, if no one's ever seen it, it's not an actual site, no one's ever heard about it, there's no records about it, no one's ever talked about it before, then John has to be making this whole thing up. And if he writes an entire chapter about making up something about a pool that doesn't exist, then what else did he make up in his gospel? He has to be lying about the whole thing. We can't consider it historically reliable, right? And then, in 1888, a German archaeologist and an architect was in Jerusalem, and he was just working regular maintenance on his church. It's called St. Anne's Church. And they struck something during regular maintenance. They were digging, and as they dug, they accidentally broke into this massive underground structure that looked like a water reservoir. And so then they realized they kept digging, and then under the rubble, they found what was known as the Pool of Bethesda, exactly how John describes it in the Bible. It had 5 covered walkways, the porches in the very old city of Jerusalem. And guys, time and time again, what you're going to see throughout history, people have taken the Bible and have tried to say things like, well, it's not historically accurate and it doesn't measure up, but time and time again, they're proven wrong. The Bible's not only historically accurate, it also has power. Actually, like real power. That's why, like, I see some of you guys, and I've known you, like, for the past year. You came in here a year ago, and we go through the scriptures, and we read, and you get into a small group, and you go through the scriptures, and I'm like, man, you are nowhere near the same person that you were last year. It's because the Bible's more than just a historical document. It also has the power to change and to transform. That's like when we read the scriptures and you walk out of here and you're like, man, I feel like I need to change something about my life. Or I feel comforted right now. I feel like the Lord is comforting me. It's because the scriptures are powerful and they are historically accurate. But I want to get back to the scene. I want to put us in the shoes of everything that Jesus is seeing when he shows up to this pool. So Jesus shows up to this pool in Jerusalem, and it says that there's a multitude of lame and a multitude of blind laying down by this pool. And I want us to picture what this pool is like, because it's not just like a little kiddie pool, but it's also, anyone been to the lagoon in Wesley Chapel? Yeah, it's not that big. That pool is massive. It's not that big in Wesley Chapel. It's probably the size of like an Olympic-sized pool, maybe a little bit bigger than an Olympic-sized pool. And it says that Jesus shows up on the scene and he sees a multitude of blind, lame, paralyzed, laying by this pool. I want us to picture what a multitude actually is. The other times in the Bible that Jesus uses the word, or whoever's writing it, uses the word multitude, is like when Jesus feeds the 4,000, Jesus feeds the 5,000, or he does a miracle, and then there's multitudes of people following him. So I want us to imagine what Jesus is seeing. He's not just seeing like 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 people laying by this pool. He's seeing a multitude. I can't give you the exact number of what that is, but just know it's a lot. The only time they use it in the Bible is a lot. But the question is why, right? Why are all of these people laying by this pool? Like, they're not just trying to get a suntan, guys. Like, why are they laying by this pool? Now, it was the common belief during this time that if there was no big gust of wind, like if there was no like massive gust of wind and the water started to stir, the water started to turn, that they believed that an angel from the Lord was coming down from heaven, stirring up the water, and the water had healing properties. And they believed that the first person to make it into that pool, all the blind, lame, and paralyzed, the first one to make it into that pool, they got healed of whatever disease they had. Like completely healed of the disease that they had. Now, I was like, does it really heal or does it not? And the thing is we don't really know if it was superstition or legend, and we'll get to that later. But what I want us to see here is, I read verses 1 to 5. Did anyone notice something about these verses? Verse 4. Did you notice how in the ESV version that I read, verse 4 was completely skipped? Anyone have verse 4 in their Bible? Right there, a couple. Who doesn't have verse 4 in their Bible? Who just skips? Right? It's interesting. So I'm like nerding out over this week. I'm like, why on earth does my Bible just absolutely skip verse 4? Like what's going on here? Like what's this verse 4 about? And then I was looking for translations this week that have verse 4, and I found the King James Version. The King James Version has verse 4. I'm going to throw it on the screen. It says, "For an angel went down in a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first, after the troubling of the water, stepped in was made whole of whatever disease he had." So guys, I'm like nerding out over this week. I'm like, what's going on? Why does my Bible not have verse 4? So apparently, I found that the very oldest manuscripts we have, the oldest known manuscripts we have of the Bible, doesn't include verse 4. But then as some newer manuscripts are starting to be copied, some of the newer ones start to have verse 4 trickle into these newer manuscripts. And I'm like, what is going on? So this is what they believe happened. Is as the scribes of the old day were copying down the Bible, some of them put a little margin, a little note in the margin that said, this is basically explaining why all the people were laying at the pool. And then eventually, over time, as the Bible kept getting translated and copied and copied and copied, it just ended up in the actual scripture. There's for my Bible nerds. We're going to move on, though. I was wondering, though, what is it? I was so frustrated this week because I'm like, does the pool actually heal them, or does it not? Or was it just legend? And then I realized, you know what? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if the pool heals or it doesn't heal. What does matter is this, is that no matter what, if someone got into that pool and did get healed, it would have only been a physical healing. The pool couldn't forgive their sin. The pool couldn't restore their identity. The pool couldn't cover their shame, and the pool couldn't cover their guilt. The pool couldn't heal their heart. The pool couldn't give them peace. The pool couldn't turn them into a new creation. The pool couldn't transform them. If the pool could heal, it was only physical. And that's what we're really going to be talking about tonight. But I want to talk about how hopeless this man is, how broken this man is, and how his brokenness goes so much further than just his legs. It goes so much deeper than just his legs. Like being an invalid means being chronically sick. It means that you cannot actually physically take care of yourself. Someone has to always take care of you. This guy's a man. Every time he's laying by the pool, what he's seeing is he sees a man go into the water before him and get his healing every single time. So for years, this is all he's seeing. He has this hope, but then it's stripped away from him. I would like to imagine that this guy was so broken, he probably felt like a failure. He probably felt like he's let his whole family down. His pride was probably shredded. And honestly, just like Nick Vucic, he probably started to develop a ton of suicidal thoughts because he felt like a failure. And especially on this day, the day that Jesus shows up on this scene, out of any other day, this day he would have had absolutely zero hope of getting healed because it was the Sabbath. It was against the law to get healed on the Sabbath because it would have been considered work. You could not even pick up your mat on the Sabbath. You couldn't crawl to the pool on the Sabbath. You would be considered working. I want to give you guys some of the examples of how absurd these Sabbath rules are. The Pharisees had 39 categories of work on the Sabbath. This was some of the rules. This is insane. You couldn't carry anything heavier than a dried fig on the Sabbath. You couldn't tie or untie knots. You couldn't sew more than one stitch. You couldn't write more than one letter. You couldn't start a fire. You couldn't cook. This is my favorite one. You couldn't throw something in the air on the Sabbath because that would be considered your arm is working. But then the Pharisees started to have a little bit of debate, and they said, well, wait a minute. What if you throw something in the air, but you catch it with the other hand? Is that still considered work? Like, this is the absurdity that's going on, where this man, when Jesus shows up and he asks him, do you want to be healed? He's not even thinking about healing. It's not even on his mind because of how strict the Sabbath rule is. But Jesus goes up to this man in his absolute state of hopelessness. Verse 6, throw it out there. This is what he says. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, do you want to be healed? So one thing I thought about this week is Jesus is trying to show this man something. First, yes, he's confronting his hopelessness in this moment. But also, Jesus is asking him this question because he wants to reveal. Jesus knows this man. He knows everything about us. He knows what we go through. He knows what we hope in. And he's asking him this question, not just for his legs. He's asking him this question because he's trying to get him to see that for the past 38 years, he's been hoping in the wrong thing. Look at his answer in verse 7. The sick man answered him, Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going, another one always steps down before me. So basically what this man is saying is, Jesus is like, do you want to be healed? And he says, yes, Jesus, can you partner with me? Can you partner with me and bring me to the water? Can you partner with me, Jesus, and bring me to my joy? Can you partner with me, Jesus, and bring me to my salvation? Jesus, can you partner with me and bring me to my satisfaction? Jesus, can you partner with me and bring me to my saving grace? Now, we can look at this and be like, what are you doing? Jesus is right in front of you. Like, you could have asked for spiritual healing in the moment, and we could just look down on this man and condemn him, but the reality is we do this to Jesus all the time. Let me give you guys a couple examples. Typically, when we connect with Jesus, we're at the most hopeless state of our lives. Think about all the times you talk to Jesus when you feel like your life is going good, right? Oftentimes we don't. We connect with Jesus when we're at the most hopeless state of our lives. We feel like we don't fit in, we're insecure about something, we're broken over our past, we want to feel important, we're sitting on this mat for 38 years. And Jesus stands over you and he says, do you want to be healed? And we ask Jesus, I'm broken, can you partner with me in bringing me to the water? Let me give you guys a couple examples. Jesus, I feel lonely right now. If you could just pick me up, Jesus, and bring me into a new relationship, I promise I'll never feel lonely again. I promise. Jesus, I don't feel important right now. If you could just help me pass this test so then I can get into med school and then I could make my parents proud and I finally will feel like I matter when that happens, Jesus. Jesus, I'm not feeling secure right now. I'm down on my finances and I'm worried. Can you just pick me up? Can you just pick me up off this mat and bring me to a higher paying job? Because as soon as I do that, I promise you, I will never feel like I'm lacking again. Jesus, I'm not confident. Can you make this person notice me? Because if they notice me, then I'll finally feel like a somebody. I'll finally feel like I matter. I'm lacking purpose, Jesus. Can you bring me to my purpose? And what we're essentially saying to Jesus in this moment is, Jesus, can you bring me to my joy? It's not Jesus, you are my joy. It's Jesus, can you bring me to my joy? And how many times when we ask Jesus to pick us up off that mat and take us to our joy, we realize it fails every single time. We always come back and we always feel like we're wanting more. We're going to strive for something greater. We're going to strive for something more. It never works, ever. We have to be careful not to become like the man when Jesus asked, do you want to be healed? Not to just think about our current circumstances, but to think about our soul, to think about our sin, to think about the things on the inside. Because he wants to heal more than just our legs. I'm going to put this on the screen. Oftentimes, we try to make Jesus our assistant, carrying us to the things we think will fix our lives, but no job, relationship, or opportunity can heal what only he can. He doesn't want to take you to your pool for healing. He wants to take you to himself. And one thing I feel like God was showing me this week, he's like, Aaron, not everyone wants to be healed. Like, I can't imagine that if Jesus showed up on this scene and let's say that out of the multitude of lame and multitude of blind, if Jesus showed up at this pool and he asked every single one of them, however many there were, do you want to be healed? I can't imagine that every single one of them would have said yes. Like, I can't imagine that. Why? Because if you're there, you probably aren't providing for yourself. Someone is showing up every day. They're probably providing you with water. They're feeding you. Your family's coming by. Like this man, for instance, he's laying on this mat. He's an invalid, which means he cannot take care of himself. So it's easy to get comfortable there. It's easy sometimes to get comfortable in our sin to where when Jesus asks us, do you want to be healed? We resist Jesus. We're like, no, actually, I'm comfortable here. I'm doing good. Like, for example, I want to give you guys a personal story. This week, I got sick. If you guys can hear that, it's bad. I feel bad. If Jake gets this mic next, he's going to get sick. But this week, I am just like bedridden. On top of this, I'm moving into this new place. And so I got boxes stacked up in my house. And I'm just like, hey, Karina, I like snot's dripping out of my nose. I'm pulling my nose. You guys, someone gave it to me, but you guys probably know what I'm talking about because it's going around here. I know it is. And I'm laying in bed, and I'm just like, there's so much work to do. And then I get a knock on the door. It's like, it's Karina. She's like, hey, honey, I made you a cup of coffee. Here it is. And she brings it in, and I'm like, oh, this is nice and warm. I'm laying in my bed. And then drink the cup of coffee. 10 minutes later, get another knock on the door. Hey, honey, I made you some Theraflu. This will make you feel better. I promise this will make you feel better. And I'm just like, oh, this is so great. And I'm drinking the Theraflu. 10 minutes go by, another knock on the door. Hey, honey, I made you chicken noodle soup. And I'm like, this is great. And if Karina, at that moment, opened up the door, walked into the room, and she said, Aaron, do you want to be healed? I'd be like, no. This feels great. Like, can you make me another, whatever. Guys, I had boxes, I had work to do. I felt comfortable, but I knew if I got healthy, being healthy actually seemed like more work than being sick. That's the situation we're in, guys, is we can get so comfortable in our sin that when Jesus shows up to us and he says, do you want to be healed? Like, really? Really, do you want to be healed? And we're like, no. Because pursuing healing is actually a difficult road. Like for example, like I've seen this over and over and over again, guys. Like I've even done this. Like you just stay in a toxic relationship that you're like, man, I don't know why I'm in this relationship. It's horrible. You want to break up with them, but somehow you don't. Because why? Because singleness seems scary. You can't imagine that your life would be any better. Healing seems scary. Healing seems hard. Like, guys, I have seen it over and over again, people in abusive relationships who stay, who if they move out of the house, they swear they're done, they're never going back. 2 days later, they're moving in again. And it used to frustrate me so bad. I'm like, why? Like they're forcing you to do things, they're abusing you, and you keep going back. Like, why is that? And I feel like God was showing me this week is because it takes faith to pursue healing. It takes faith to step out into the unknown. It seems harder. We can't imagine that a life would be any better than us. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be that, though. It doesn't have to be relationships. I know I'm always talking about relationships up here, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be holding on to excessive drinking and partying because you're afraid that if you stop, even though you know you should stop, you're afraid that you're going to lose all your friends. Sometimes it takes a step out in faith. Guys, this is not in my notes, but I feel like, I don't know if I should share this, but I'm going to do it. Freshman year, someone came to me, I was struggling with a test. I'm like, man, I can't focus, I can't study. And they're like, here, you should try this. It's good. It's Adderall. Take it. And so I take the Adderall freshman year of college, and dude, I was like laser focused. I'm like lasered in. And I got a really good grade on the test. And then next test comes, and I'm like, I go back to the guy. I'm like, hey, do you have that again? And I take it again. And then next test comes. Next thing you know, I'm taking it every single day, guys. I don't even have ADHD. Every single day. And I remember the Lord coming over me and putting so much conviction in my heart and saying, Aaron, you don't need this. You don't need this to pass a test. Like, you've fallen so far from me. Pursue healing. But I was so afraid that I'd never be able to live again without it. I was so terrified, and finally I took the step of faith. I'm like, you know what? You're right, Lord. I promise I'm taking the step of faith. Guys, I haven't taken Adderall in 6 years. But I tell you that story, guys, because God could be standing over you today and reaching out his hand and saying, do you want to be healed? And I pray that you do take the step of faith. I'm going to put this on the screen. Jesus asked the man in John 5, do you want to be healed? Healing sounds good, but saying yes to Jesus means change. And sometimes staying broken feels easier than trusting him with the unknown. Yet true life begins the moment you trust him. Today, will you say yes to his healing and change? I'm going to read, I'll leave this up here for like one more second. 2, 3, 4. All right. I want to read the next verses, all the rest of the verses 8 to 17. It just flows together. It's one big picture that we can put ourselves in. But 8 to 17 says, Jesus said to him, get up, take up your bed and walk. And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, it is the Sabbath. It's not lawful for you to take up your bed and walk. But he answered them, the man who healed me, that man said to me, take up your bed and walk. They asked him, who's this man who said it to you, take up your bed and walk? Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, as there was a crowd in the place. Afterward, Jesus saw him in the temple and said to him, see, you're well, sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you. That the man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, my Father is working until now, and I am working. So I want to explain this scene because Jesus says, pick up your mat and walk. The guy immediately gets healed. What he's been dealing with for 38 years, he stands up and walks. He's walking on his new legs, and he's like, all right, I'm going to pick up this mat and walk. So he picks up this mat and he walks. But remember what I said about the dried fig? You can't carry anything on the Sabbath heavier than a dried fig. So this man, the mat's obviously heavier than the dried fig, and he's walking with it. And the Pharisees see that. They're like, it's not lawful for you to take up your bed on the Sabbath. Like, it's heavier than a dried fig. And he's like, he starts freaking out. He's like, oh, yeah, you're you're right, it's not. He's like, well, Jesus told me to do it. And he points at Jesus, and Jesus has already vanished in the crowd. And at that moment, Jesus then sees the man in the temple, and he goes up to him. He's like, look, dude, your legs are healed. Like you're good. But go and sin no more. So Jesus is like, look, you're physically healed, but there's still something spiritual that you need in your heart. He's trying to point that out at the man. But the dude is so afraid. He's like, dude, get away from me. And he basically runs and goes tell the Jews exactly who healed him. This man completely missed the miracle entirely. He got trapped into something called legalism. And I feel like I have picked on this man so much, so I'm going to go to the Pharisees now. Because these Pharisees, they just witnessed a man who had been paralyzed for 38 years just get healed. Like, Jesus just did a miracle. And the only thing on their mind was that he had broken the Sabbath laws that they made up. It was their law that they made up. And guys, legalism was so embedded into these Pharisees and following the laws. Like, I want us to give some context on here, because the Pharisees are this religious group that rose to power. They rose to influence. And when they rose to influence, then one day their nation had fallen because they broke God's law and turned to idols. And they were so scared that if they broke God's law again, that the same thing would happen to them. So they started to create this mindset that grew really strict. They added fences around all of God's command, and they made hundreds of extra rules to make sure that no one even came close to disobedience. Rules that God didn't even command them. They wanted to protect this thing. So what started off as good, what started off as a desire to become more holy, ended up becoming bad, because they cared more about the rules than loving people. They cared more about the rules than loving God, and all they cared about was rules. That's why they had so many rules on the Sabbath, guys. But what happens when a human relationship with God is solely on rules, it really affects us. It really affects us deep down. Like, and maybe you're here right now and you're like, do I have a legalistic heart? Like, I'm going to give you guys some tests. When we have a legalistic heart, we start to strive for perfection. Everything in our life, we have to be perfect at everything we do, especially when it comes to God. We strive for the approval of others. We live for the approval of others. It fuels us. We are quick to judge, quick to point out the faults and flaws in other people. We're never in the wrong. They're always in the wrong. We start to think we're spiritually superior than everyone. We're better than everyone. We're more holy than everyone. And we start to wonder why all of our friends are not as serious about Jesus as us. Like, that becomes ingrained in our heart. But here's the thing when we get that heart, is a legalistic heart always misses God's work. A legalistic heart always misses God's miracles. I want to give you guys an example. There's this pastor one time who told me that he was going to go up to St. Leo University. He had already done it. This is a story he told me. He's going to go up to St. Leo University, and he's going to give a gospel presentation at St. Leo. He doesn't know what it's going to come out. He's basically got in contact with the dean over there. He's going to bring a worship team, so he sets up camp. Like, he's over there. And during the first worship song, he starts to notice something. He starts to notice that there is a big crowd forming at St. Leo University. Like, he's about to give this gospel presentation, and he's new in ministry. So he calls his senior pastor. He's like, dude, you got to get over here. Like, this is incredible. There's hundreds of college students out here. I'm about to give a gospel presentation. And so the senior pastor's like, all right, I'm going. And so he drives over there. He gets there. And right before he's about to step on stage, he gets on stage. He gets the gospel presentation. Guys, hundreds of people get saved that day. Like, hands are raising. After this, they brought out like one of those horse trough thing, and they start baptizing people. Like, 100 people got baptized that day. Like, an absolute miracle at St. Leo University. And then the senior pastor, one second. Sorry. This is totally going to blow the point, but the senior pastor, at that moment, he says, come over here. And he's walking over and he's like, man, this guy's about to be like, great job. Like, this is a miracle in itself. Like, I can't believe. And the thing, he looks at him and he says, you let your worship leader wear earrings and a hat? A miracle just happened at St. Leo University. Hundreds of people just got saved. And all the senior pastor could think about was that they broke a rule that he made up. The worship leader had a hat on and earrings. Don't let the man-made rules of Christianity blind you to God's work. And the reason I say that, guys, is one, because God is working in here and in this room 100%, but also there are people that are coming in here who have been deeply hurt by man-made rules and religion and things that people have put on people. But Christianity was never about following man-made rules. It was always about following the man, Jesus. And don't ever let these rules that people put on you distract you from the gospel that Jesus is God. He came down in human form. He lived a perfect, sinless life. He died on the cross. 3 days later, he rose from the dead. He appeared to 500 plus people, his disciples included. And he proved something by dying on the cross and rising again from the dead. He proved that he has the power and authority over death and sin itself. He proved that. And so if you're in here today and you don't know Jesus, Christianity isn't about all these rules that you have to do. It's about him. It's about pursuing him. Jesus wants to change you. Jesus wants to transform you. Don't miss it tonight, guys. Don't miss it. He's here. He's extending his hand, just like the blind man in this, or just like the invalid in here, 38 years. Maybe you're 21 years old and you've been on a mat for 21 years and nothing has worked. You're stuck in your sin, and he's extending a hand today and he's saying, do you want to be healed? And I pray that you guys answer that with a yes today. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for this word. Thank you for this passage, this divinely inspired, God-breathed passage, Lord, that we know has always transformed lives, has always transformed us, has always saved people. Your word is so powerful. It changes us and it transforms us, Lord, and we're so grateful for that. I pray over the people in the room tonight who have struggled with something in their lives where Jesus is standing over them and said, do you want to be healed? And they're scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to take the step of faith, Lord. I pray that you would tell them, get up off that mat and walk. But that it wouldn't just be a physical healing, Lord. You would show them that they need something deeper inside of them, Lord, that you want to heal. I pray that Jesus becomes someone's joy tonight, that Jesus becomes someone's satisfaction tonight, and nothing else. It's all in Christ's name. Amen.